Hey everyone, today I want to talk to you a little bit about poetic terms. So, the basic figurative language that's going to come up in poetry that you read. Rhyme. So, one of the things that we all know is that there's going to be rhyme in poetry. We're used to different words rhyming and that defining what a poem is. What sometimes we don't realize is that an ending rhyme is the one we're common and used to, but we also can have rhymes within the middle of a poem. Let's look at My Beard by Shel Silverstein. My beard grows to my toes. I never wears no clothes. I wraps my hair around my bear, and down the road I goes. So we see toes and clothes. We see a couplet right there. The last word is rhyming in two sentences in a row, and then another one with hair and bear. Sometimes that's all I people will notice when they're looking at a poem. But we also could see grows in the middle is rhyming with toes and clothes and goes. So we want to focus on all the words that rhyme when we're looking at a poem. Um, we also can look at things like the fact that, let's see if I get a pen out here. Right here, toes would be line A, and it's going to rhyme with clothes, which would also be A. And then hair is a different rhyme. It doesn't rhyme with clothes and toes. So we'd make this B. But hair rhymes with bear. Even though things aren't spelled the same, they can still rhyme. So that would be BB. But then when we get to goes, again, it's rhyming with toes and clothes. So that would be back to the line A rhyme. So the rhyme scheme of this little poem would be A B B. Sorry, I'm stuck in my pen there. Next thing we want to talk about is alliteration. This can be a lot of fun in poetry. It's the repetition of the initial letter or sound in two or more words in a line. So many times we'll think of like a tongue twister. How much dew would a dewdrop drop if a dewdrop did drop dew? We have the duh, 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 duh. The repetition of that sound is going to be alliteration. However, it doesn't need to be a tongue twister. It could just be two words. Um, so try to think of a letter and come up with a sentence where most of the words in that sentence start with the same letter. Lindsay loves lemon lollipops. We have the la, 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 la. And they're consonants. It can't be a vowel sound. It should be a consonant sound. Okay, so she walks in beauty. She walks in beauty like the night of cloudless climes and starry skies, and all that's best of dark and bright meet in the aspect on her eyes. Thus mellow to that tender light, which heaven to gaudy day denies. Where do you see some alliteration in here? We see here with cloudless climes. We see starry skies, day denies. All of these words, and it only has to be two, that start with the same consonant sound. They're going to be examples of alliteration. I had some obviously put in already. Onomatopoeia. This is another fun one. This is going to be the sound that something makes. So when words that spell out sounds, words that sound like what they mean. Growl, hiss, pop, boom, crack. These are all going to be examples of onomatopoeia. So the dog growled. Well, the sound the dog makes is a growl. The popcorn popped. Well, the sound popcorn makes when it pops is pop, pop, pop. So the sound and the word are the same. Let's look at this poem and see if you can find some examples as I read it. Noise Day by Shel Silverstein. Let's have one day for the girls and voices, when you can make all the grandest noises. Screech, scream, holler, and yell. Buzz a buzzer, clang a bell. Sneeze, hiccup, whistle, shout. Laugh until your lungs wear out. Toot a whistle, kick a can, bang a spoon against a pan. Sing, yodel, bellow, hum, blow a horn, beat a drum, rattle a window, slam a door, scrape a rake across the floor. There are tons of examples in here. We see the buzz because the buzzer goes buzz, the bell goes clang, to whistle, to shout, to sneeze. I mean, there are a ton in here. Hopefully, you were able to pick a couple out as well as I read through that. But it's basically the sound something makes. A simile. This is going to be when you're comparing something to something else and you're using like or as to compare it. So it helps your reader to really know what you're talking about. It helps them to understand and it helps you to be more descriptive. Joe is as hungry as a bear. So he's not just a little hungry, he is starving. He's as hungry as a bear would be. He could eat a ton. The yarn is as red as a rose. If I said to you the yarn is red, some of you might be picturing a pink red, some of you might be picturing a white red, dark red, a burgundy. But if I tell you it's as red as a rose, then we're picturing a red rose and that to be the color of the yarn. So it really helps the person you're talking to or the person you're writing for to have an image and see what you're trying to say. Whoops, overwent one there. Hang on. I'm going to read you one more part of a poem to look at some similes. A poem should be palatable and mute as a globed fruit, silent as the sleeve worn stone of casement ledges where the moss has grown. A poem should be wordless as the flight of birds. So we see a couple examples in here of similes as a globed fruit, as the sleeve worn stone. So how silent is a sleeve worn stone? How wordless are a flight of birds? Poetry really gets you to hopefully think about these things as you're reading. Reading a poem and figuring out the meaning is like putting a puzzle together. There's a little bit of work behind it, but then when you can connect the pieces, there's definitely a feeling of satisfaction. So you want to be doing those things while you're reading. Next, we have a metaphor. So this is going to be just like a simile, but you're not using like or as. You're going to just compare two unrelated things. Joe is a tiger on the court. Well, what does that mean? Most likely you're thinking he's fast, he goes after the ball, he's a great player, he's like a tiger out there. That's how good he is. Nellie is a mouse when it comes up to standing up for herself. Well, if she's a mouse when it comes to standing up for herself, it makes her look like, a mouse is kind of quiet and sneaks away. She's not very good at it. She's a little bit more reserved. The difference between a simile and a metaphor is that a simile requires either like or as to be concluded in the comparison, and a metaphor does not require that. Okay, so when it comes to using a metaphor, two things can happen. You can have one metaphor or a couple metaphors in a poem, like the example of someone is a tiger on the court, or they're a mouse when it comes to standing up for something. You can have these little metaphors. But oftentimes you're going to find a bigger comparison in a poem. Throughout the poem, two things are being compared. Emily Dickinson does that, Shakespeare does that, and in this poem, we're going to see Robert Frost doing it. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both. And be one traveler long I stood, and looked down one as far as I could, to where it bent in the undergrowth. I shall be telling this with a sigh. Somewhere ages and ages hence, two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. So those little dots in the middle mean that a couple stanzas were taken out. But throughout the poem, what we hear about in stanza one and the last stanza, which is on here, are comparing two things. It's not just the choice of a person walking in the woods and all of a sudden there's two different paths and they look down both and decide which one to go. That's actually being compared to somebody's life choice. And in life, when you have a choice to make, which way do you go and how do you make that decision? Hyperbole is going to be an over exaggeration to emphasize something. I may sweat to death. So I'm sweating so much, I may sweat to death. You're not actually going to die from sweating, hopefully, but that's how you feel. I just read a million pages of the text. You didn't really read a million pages. That's an exaggeration. However, it felt like you read that much because you did so much reading. The last one says the blood bank needs a river of blood. Well, they need a ton of blood, is what they're saying. They really need people to go out and support it. They need so much that they could fill a river with the amount that they need. These are called hyperboles because they exaggerate the truth a little bit or a lot. Okay, last thing I want to talk about is personification, my favorite part of poetry. It's giving human characteristics to inanimate objects, ideas, or animals. It makes your writing sound so beautiful. The sun stretched its lazy fingers over the valley. So we're picturing the rays of the sun stretching over the valley like lazy fingers would reach out. It really puts a beautiful image in your mind. The leaves are dancing in the wind. Sometimes, at least in New England where I live, the fall times the leaves are falling off the trees, the wind is blowing them around. And rather than looking outside and saying, oh gosh, it's such a cold, blustery day, try to find beauty in it. The leaves look like they're dancing in the wind as they blow around. Personification really does add that image and oftentimes beauty to your poetry. So hopefully these are a couple examples of figurative language that you can understand a little bit better and use when you're writing poetry or even writing in general. Good luck, everybody.